How's it going, guys? So today we are working on a 2008 air-cooled Bonneville, and the client had a sudden no spark issue. They were driving along, stopped somewhere, went to go fire it back up, and they weren't getting any spark. And this happened to them several times, asked us to take a look at it, and we spent a good amount of time going through checking all the different electrical components, different things that would cause a no spark issue. And we're pretty sure that we have narrowed it down to the ignition or the pickup coil that is located here. It runs out here and then up under the seat to this sensor here. And today we're going to show you guys how to replace that. Hopefully it fixes it. If it doesn't, who knows? Maybe you guys never see this video and I don't look like I don't know what I'm doing. We'll find out. Okay, so in order to change out the pickup coil, what you're going to need to do is you're going to take this right-hand side cover off, crack these bolts loose. Sometimes it's going to require a little bit of persuasion, and in order to do that without messing up the side cover, you take a rubber mallet or something along those lines, give it a couple of taps, and it'll pop right off. Something to keep in mind is you're going to want to do this on the side stand, not the center stand. Just because of the lean of the bike, it'll keep a little bit more of the fluid inside the bike and less of it spewing out onto your ground. Even with that being said, we have a super high-tech, single-use baking pan that we're going to use. Put that up under there. We're going to work on cracking these off. Here we go. You guys still here? Okay, just checking. Last one, there we go. All right. Yeah, that's not coming off. See if that, oh yeah, there we go. See that? Oh yeah, look at that, almost nothing came out. All right, so there it is. That is your pickup coil. And these do have a tendency to go out. It is kind of a little bit of a known issue, especially when you do start getting those symptoms like no spark. This is definitely something you want to check. But yeah, so we're going to pull these two bolts out here, and then we will get a little bit closer look and talk about setting the gap. Okay, so what you guys didn't just see is that in order to completely get the pickup cable or pickup coil removed, we had to snip it in between because it's still a factory harness. Nothing's been removed. So that cable ran through several zip ties, which are almost impossible to get to. So in order just to speed that process up, we snipped the cable and then pulled it from both the bottom engine side and the top side where it connects to the top. So now that that is completely out of the way, we're going to go ahead, get the gasket removed, get all that cleaned up, get the new one installed, and then run that cable back in an appropriate route. Okay, so it took forever, but we finally got all the remnants and residue off of the case where the gasket's going to sit and where the old one was sitting. Now, it's very important to make sure that the surface there is extremely clean. And I know this goes without being said in a lot of cases, and it's common sense, but you need to make sure that that lip is completely clean and there's nothing left. If there is, then when you put that gasket on, it's going to create a space where you're going to get a leak. You want to avoid that. You'll end up having to pop the cover back off, put a new gasket on, waste of time, waste of money. So make sure that's clean before you proceed to the next step. And as important as making sure that that surface is clean, as I stated before, you want to come back in here and all of the little pieces that you were scraping off, all the dust, everything that could have gotten into that space, you want to make sure that's out before you get this sealed back up. Okay, so we have our surface cleaned. We also did a very thorough cleaning. Double check, triple check, make sure that you don't have any pieces of your gasket, any dust, particles, anything that could have gotten inside the case when you were doing the disassembly and taking that old part out. Make sure that is completely clean so that you don't have issues down the road. Okay, so what we have here is we've got the new pickup coil loosely mounted in place where we can still do our adjustment if we need to. And you're going to want to take your feeler gauge and set the gap in between the new pickup and one of the 3 triggers to 0.8. Now, the manual will say somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9. So, if you look right here, on the outside of the wheel, there are 3 of these spaced apart. They're referred to as different things. Most commonly, I believe, they're called triggers. But you're wanting to set the gap between that trigger and the bottom pin on the pickup coil. That's where you're making sure that you have that 0.8 spacing. Now, I will point out that getting the gasket and the cover back on can be a bit of a pain because of this rubber grommet right here. Because when you feed that wire up around the holder and out the bottom of the case, there's some tension on there and it wants to pop out. And the gasket has to go over top of that rubber grommet in between it and the outside of the case. As a result, it does make it very difficult, one hand trying to get the gasket lined up and to get that seated to where it's supposed to be without that popping back off. All right, so now what we have here is we have the side cover put back on. We made sure that our rubber grommet around the new pickup coil cable was seated where it's supposed to go. The gasket is seated around that. Everything is nice and flush the way it should be. We have a couple of the side cover bolts holding it in place. Now we're going to put all those back on and then we'll torque it to spec. Okay, so now our side cover is bolted back in place. It's torqued to spec. We've got our cable ran in the OEM location. That is kind of a pain to do. Try to get it as close as possible. If you have to reroute it a little bit, it's not that big of a deal, but you do want to try to get it as close as it was from the factory. All right, so that was swapping out a pickup coil for a 2008 air-cooled Bonneville. Overall, not a bad job. A little time consuming, a little tedious, but not bad. Hopefully you picked up some information you can use if you're having an issue with no spark. Maybe this helps you out. Hopefully it does. Time for us to get this bike put back together. Hopefully this fixes the problem and we get this back to the client.